Hey, Radiant Souls, welcome back. I'm so glad to see you. I hope you're having a great day. My day has been pretty good so far. It's better now that I can spend a little bit of it with you. And yes, I am actually that cheesy a good portion of the time. So I had a thought this morning just pop in my head about a certain word, and I wanted us to play around with it a little bit. So I have a question for you. Would you hire yourself in your own life? Not necessarily in a job, but would you hire yourself to do your life? And before you jump in the comments and say no, because I know how some of us have that self-judgment thing that just kicks in, let's talk about it for a little bit. So the word that popped in my head this morning was resume, but the way I was seeing it was reuse me, which makes a lot of sense because when I worked in a corporate job as I was building my business up on the side, I was very lucky in a couple of different jobs that I had with different companies. I was lucky to be in a position where I could interview people for other jobs. So I always got a kick out of kind of seeing how people would present themselves on a resume and in an interview. And when I tell you that results vary across the board with what people will say or put forth about themselves, it's crazy. So if we're looking at resume and we look at it as reuse me, because that's really what you're saying, right? You're saying, here's the list of things I've done in the past. Can you use them to your benefit, employer person or school or whatever it is you're applying to? So let's look at that for ourselves. Let's say if we, maybe our higher selves, we're hiring for the job of our next goal, our next version of ourselves. Maybe there's something you really want to check off the list for yourself. Maybe there's a relationship you want to get. Maybe there is a job you want to get. Maybe there's a business you want to develop. Maybe there's a certain health condition or a weight loss thing, or you want to exercise more, or you just want to be happier, generally speaking, whatever it is. If you look at your resume to date, would you hire yourself to take that next step? Because looking at it in this way is kind of a nice hack to see, like I mentioned earlier, where are those limiting beliefs, but where are your strengths, maybe your weaknesses, but we want to look at them without judgment, and where are there opportunities for you to step into that new role? So if you think about writing a traditional resume, one of the things that's really helpful is, and this is where I saw those results really vary. Don't put everything in there. Don't just regurgitate everything you've done. So if you're looking at, let's say you want to, find a new relationship. You don't need to tell yourself, since you're the hiring manager here, you don't need to tell yourself the story of every relationship you've had to date. Let's look at the good things, or let's look at what you've learned from that. Because the other thing about being someone who reads a resume and hires people is that you really want to see how they're going to contribute to your organization or your project. So if you're the higher self and you are your higher self in this little role play thing we've got going, and you want to say, hey, who has the skills to take me to that next level? Or is that person ready to go to the next level? So if you're restating all of the things that went wrong, in first grade, I hung out with this boy and he was mean to me and pulled my hair or whatever, it's probably not relevant. But if you say, I learned to develop boundaries, that's a little nicer way to say it. So, think of how you are telling those stories to yourself. And we had a video just a few days ago about what stories are overdue. This is another way to kind of look at it. Are those stories relevant for your next thing, your next job, if you will? By the way, I like to look at the word job as joy of being. So what brings you joy? That's your real job in life. So the next thing you want to do kind of dovetails off of that is to put your best foot forward. Again, this was so shocking to me that people would come into an interview, or they would be late for the interview, they would miss the interview but still want the position, they would talk badly about the position they were currently in, or their manager or their coworkers or whatever. So when we are looking at making our next step or reaching our next goal, our next level of self, how are we behaving? How are we showing up for that kind of interview, for that next position? Because part of this little role play we're doing is that you're also your own boss. You need to be the boss of you. You need to develop those habits that support the level of you that you want to be. So put your best foot forward. Get yourself in the energy of what it is that you want, because they always kind of tell you if you're going for an interview at a certain, like let's say you're interviewing at a big fashion company, which is really not my thing, but you would probably want to wear their brand if you could, or you would want to show up in a certain way because you're kind of psychologically hacking the interviewer to say, oh, I look like I already belong here. So for you, dress as if, act as if, be as if you already belong in that new life, that new version of you, that new level. The other thing we want to say is, this is always a fun one too, and I kind of alluded to it before, but list your experiences, not just your credentials. So it always kind of makes me laugh, and I see this a lot in the spiritual community, and I'm going to give grace for it, and but it always made me go, why? Somebody will say, I studied with so-and-so, or I took a course from this person, and they'll name the person as if that person has bequeathed upon them all of their abilities. So I studied geology. I'm not a geologist. Where you have been doesn't reflect what you learned from that certain thing. So you can say, I studied under so-and-so, or you can say, as a result of partnering with this person, I learned this and this and this and this, and I adapted my style to their teaching, or I have these many people who will step forward and say how I helped them. Whatever it is, it's not just like a rubber stamp of I went to this school, I read this book, I took this course. It's what did you do with that information? How did you bring that on board for yourself? So when you're looking at that next level of you, sometimes if we're not kicking ourselves in the pants, which we do, then we're kind of like blowing smoke up our own you-know-whats, because we'll also kind of say, oh, I've read all the books. I've done all the things. I've taken 27 courses this year, so I am ready to go. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Be honest with yourself in that evaluation too. Did you hear things and maybe say, oh, that's not for me, which it may not resonate with you, but use that discernment in how you're saying things aren't for you. Or did you say they weren't for you because it made you uncomfortable, or because it made you need to work a little harder? So what you gained from your experiences, not just the credentials. So looking at that, and you can even do this as an exercise. You can write your life history out as kind of a resume. If you want to lose 20 pounds, let's make a CV, a resume for it, and say, okay, here's what I've done in the past. I've been really good at doing this particular type of daily activity. I can bring consistency to these areas of my life. And so in our example, it wouldn't be, I bought the lettuce, I bought the fruits, I bought the vegetables. They can still be sitting in the fridge. It doesn't mean you're eating them. So those are your credentials. What experiences are you bringing? And then be in the energy of that. Show up for yourself every day as your best and highest self, but also being your own boss and saying where you have room for improvement. So I don't know, I appreciate you walking down this little winding path with me today, but it just came up, resume, reuse me, and how we can apply that to kind of looking at our own limiting beliefs, our own opportunities, and where we can grow and develop. So thanks for humoring me by hanging out, and I hope you're having an amazing day. I'll see you next time. Bye.